This morning, Congressman Jake Ellzey from North Texas, not only a federal lawmaker, but also a commercial airline pilot, on the developments he will be watching for after that mid-air collision and his reaction to the first days of the Trump administration. School vouchers on the fast track in the Texas Senate, passing an early vote. State Senator Royce West, a Democrat from Dallas, sits on the Education Committee and explains why he thinks vouchers will finally pass this year. San Antonio will elect a new mayor this spring. This morning, the incumbent mayor, Ron Nirenberg, gives us an exit interview on what he's most proud of and what he wants to do next. And should law-abiding migrants be able to stay in the United States? A new survey of Texans with some fresh insight.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good Sunday morning, I'm Jason Whiteley. A lot happening this weekend, but let's start with the headlines as always here. A majority of Texans say that undocumented immigrants that follow the law should be allowed to stay in the U.S. The University of Houston did this new survey. Almost 2/3 of Texans believe there should be a way, some type of a way for migrants to stay if certain requirements are met. But Texans are adamant in that same survey that migrants who break laws, they should be deported. Texas needs 3,000 miles of brand new electric lines, ERCOT said, to keep up with the state's population boom. This is like adding new roads for more cars, but 3,000 miles of new lines? That's about the length of a cross-country drive from New York to LA. ERCOT, which manages the grid, says Texas needs the extra lines to carry power not only for new residents and neighborhoods, but also all those data centers opening all across the state. And Governor Abbott wants Congress to cut a check to Texas for $11 billion. That's how much the governor said Texas spent to help keep the border secure. Abbott said the federal government should have paid that extra amount of money for the state troopers and state guard that have been there for the past few years. Taxpayers in Texas have paid it instead. Whether Texas ever sees that amount of money, though, remains uncertain. Let's start this morning, though, in Washington, D.C. in the aftermath of that deadly mid-air collision. It happened at the airport that members of Congress use every single week. And this tragedy has become the first test of the Trump administration. Our first guest is a Republican member of Congress. Jake Ellzey represents parts of North Texas, and he is also the only commercial airline pilot serving in Congress right now. Congressman, good to see you again.
Jason, good to be with you.
Let's start with that mid-air collision in D.C. We've watched for years as close calls have happened around the country. There was one in Austin with a Southwest Airlines plane not too long ago. What do you think needs to happen? Because we saw the worst of what could happen in D.C.
We have the best trained air traffic control in the world. I think that there will always be a need for more of them as the skies get more busy. So I think we will always look at staffing and finding a way to provide more money to provide an adequate number of staff in towers. But Washington Reagan has always been a busy airport based on its proximity to helicopter travel throughout the rivers of Washington, D.C. and the military bases around. But by and large, it's been a safe operating environment for many, many years, but I do see some things changing after this mishap.
This investigation by the NTSB is just now spinning up. What are you going to be watching for as a commercial airline pilot, as a member of Congress?
I would say that it's going to take some time for this investigation to come through. Traffic will travel as normal, but I think they will put some restrictions on in the meantime. But as I've said before, as an airline pilot and as a helicopter pilot, I flew 60s in the Navy, our Navy version of the Black Hawk. Yeah. We call it the Seahawk, is that everybody's got an opinion on what occurred on this mishap, and none of those opinions are helpful to the investigation. It is a tragic day, and everybody's upset about it from the president on down, and our prayers go out to the families.
You think something might change, though, based on this, as most major airline disasters do cause change?
There will be procedures that will change with respect to concurrent commercial and helicopter travel at Reagan after this incident.
I want to ask you about this is one of the first real tests of the Trump administration. We heard the president the other day blaming DEI, the FAA, even blaming former President Biden for this. Do you think that had anything to do with what we saw?
I think everybody's upset about this because it shouldn't have happened, and they want to know why, and the immediate reactions show the level of emotion that most people have about this issue. So we're going to let the investigation play itself out.
Congressman, you're the new co-chair of the Four Country Caucus in Congress. It's a bipartisan group that's going to collaborate on the military, veterans, and national security. On what issues do you think that you can provide some influence based on your 2 decades career in the military?
Well, thanks for asking about the Four Country Caucus. Somebody asked me the other day, which 4 countries? Well, it's FOR.
Right.
Four Country Caucus,
Sure.
40 veterans in Congress, in the House of Representatives.
Republicans and Democrats.
Republicans and Democrats. It's largely equal, all working together to be nonpartisan on making sure America is more safe, secure, and our veterans are taken care of. In an era of division in this country, veterans come together, and if it's a nonpartisan issue, we're just getting going again, but if it's a nonpartisan issue that can help defense spending and our veterans, we'll go after it.
I want to ask you, with your military background, about President Trump saying we're going to take back the Panama Canal and he wants to pursue Greenland. Would you support military action for either of those, Congressman?
I think what you have to understand is, and we went through one administration of him saying things to get people to the table. That's what he does every time. It's the opening gambit, whether it's tariffs or providing for critical minerals from Greenland, or defending our Arctic border. That's what this is about, right? Because China and Russia are going after the Arctic. They are looking to mine it. They're looking to exploit it. They're looking to take it.
And same with the canal, too.
And same with the canal.
But nobody's going to give up real estate. No country's going to give up any real estate.
Everybody at this point, 100% of the world knows who Donald Trump is and how he negotiates. This is a negotiating point.
Congressman, thank you for the time.
Thanks, Jason. It's good to see you.
All right, let's bring in the roundtable to talk about the politics of this. Bud Kennedy is here from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. I am Mitra with us from the Texas Tribune in Austin, and Bernadine Steptoe, political producer at WFAA in Dallas. Bud, tomorrow marks the first 2 weeks of the Trump administration. We just heard Congressman Jake Elsey's take.
Well, and he is trying to make it sound like the president gave a somewhat of a reasonable answer by saying DEI must have been involved.
For the plane crash.
For the plane crash. Obviously, it was not a reasonable answer, but it is true that people question the qualifications of everybody on either end. He threw DEI out there. Thank goodness Congressman Elsey has more dignity in the way he handles a crash involving the U.S. Army, American Airlines, such grief for so many families.
And, people may not realize Reagan National Airport is the airport that lawmakers fly into every Monday or Sunday, and they fly out of every Thursday or Friday to go back to the districts. They use this airport every day. Do you think we're going to see some fast-track political change based on what happened?
Yeah, and also lawmakers consistently also, and Texas lawmakers have lobbied for more flights from Texas to that airport too, specifically around the connection and the the connectivity of Reagan. There's going to be a lot to look at here too, and Congressman Elsey really kind of talked about the investigation really needing it to play out, and that's really important too, because that people need to understand why this terrible tragedy happened, and that it's not going to happen, because right now we have a bunch of questions, and whether it's about air traffic control and the staffing that we have or the lack thereof. These are questions that have been asked in Austin and elsewhere too. So what's going to happen is some real clarity about how this is going to be prevented moving forward is going to be critically important.
Bernadine?
Jason, obviously there will be change because this horrendous accident happened. But I would hope that the Trump administration, all involved, will let the professionals actually do the investigation that is required, and not let politics and partisan politics come into play, where they're trying to make points by coming up with this DEI. The professionals need to be allowed to do their job.
And we will see what happens with that. Guys, thanks so much. We appreciate it. Back in just a moment here with this. When we come back this morning, State Senator Royce West, why he thinks this is the year that school vouchers become reality. And Mayor Ron Nirenberg, term limited out at San Antonio City Hall. He wants to continue to serve, so what's next for Nirenberg? Inside Texas Politics, back in a moment. Welcome back to Inside Texas Politics. Now to Austin, where school vouchers are on the fast track in the Texas Senate, passing in an early committee vote. State Senator Royce West is one of 2 Democrats on the Senate Education Committee. He opposes vouchers, but tells us he thinks this is the year they might finally pass. Senator, let's start with school vouchers here. The Senate Education Committee, on which you sit, has already passed the school voucher bill, SB 2 here. The though doesn't seem to be fully universal, giving $10,000 to anyone. It's mainly aimed at specific families who are low income, and you had some issue with that. But does that make it any more palpable to Democrats?
Well, I take a look at it every year, every session. I put it like that. And here's the situation. We have consistently said that we want these little poor kids in low performing schools in impoverished areas to get the benefit of having a private education. Well, frankly, this particular bill, as in the one this past legislative session, 88th session, is a universal bill. The fact is that if you don't have enough kids from low income areas, low income down there, this is what you got to do is look at the definition of what low income is. And when people think of low income, they don't think of people 500% of poverty, of the poverty level. Family of four, that's over $150,000. If people in that particular bracket don't subscribe, then it's open to anyone above and beyond that.
You voted against the bill in the committee there, but you said you think this might be the year that it passes. Why do you think that?
Well, I mean, the vote you look at the vote in the committee. The vote in the committee was 9-2. There's only 2 Democrats.
But the Senate has always passed it, though.
Right. And it's going to be, and the speaker's pretty much said it's going to happen in the House, too. So they have the votes in the House and also the Senate. So the question becomes is whether rural Republicans will listen to their voters and listen to their superintendents about what impact it's going to have on the public schools. And so we've heard in the past that public schools are going to be able to get the funding necessary. Not true. Not true. Based on what I'm looking at, if for some reason you if people don't subscribe to vote for this, last session, the governor held it hostage, that being public school funding. It's going to hold it hostage again this session.
Let me ask you the last question on this topic. At the end of the day, what do you think is really at stake here if vouchers pass?
Well, I think what's at stake is making certain it's going to pass. And so what safeguards are you going to have in there? You've got to make certain, let me go back to what I said in the first place. My decisions are informed by history. If you got to look at what the system was, why it came to be in the very beginning. Let's make certain that if we're going to have vouchers, that it achieves the purpose that they're supposed to be achieving. That is providing initially education for young kids that are in impoverished situations in low performing schools, and making certain that we have the demographic information where there's some accountability. There's no accountability in this particular bill whatsoever. We're giving tax dollars to private concerns without putting in place a accountability system similar to that of public schools.
Senator, you're in D.C. where the Democratic National Committee has named a new chairperson this weekend. Where do you think the party should start to rebuild?
Well, we got to start from the ground up. I mean, the reality is that we heard America real clear. I mean, there are kitchen top issues that we must address, that we've historically addressed as a Democratic Party. And I'm pretty certain we're going to do that. And so from that vantage point, we start in the kitchen, at the table, making certain that we provide the assistance that taxpayers want in America. We've got to deal with the issue at the border. We saw that those were 2 real big issues, and the message that we had did not resonate with voters to the extent that we thought they would.
Senator, good to see you. I appreciate the time.
See you soon.
President Trump's immigration crackdown has fallen out of the headlines, but it is still underway and generating a lot of fear in places like San Antonio, where more than half of the residents are Hispanic. This morning, Mayor Ron Nirenberg there on the concern in his community just a few months before he is term limited out of office. Mayor, welcome back here. There is a lot of tension in Latino communities all across the state, especially in San Antonio, where 64% of the population is Hispanic. How many people have been detained so far in your city? Any idea yet?
No idea in terms of the detentions that have happened since Trump took office. We know that there have been enforcement activities, just as there have been under President Biden, President Trump in his first term, and President Obama before that. You know, I've heard anecdotes of some, schools where students are not showing up because there's a lot of fear. I've heard the same on some job sites. Nothing to, no objective data to be measured on that, but certainly the Trump administration's goal of spreading fear, particularly through immigrant communities, but also communities like ours, like you said, which are 63% Latino, We know that there's 2 million people in Texas that are part of a mixed status household. So there's a tremendous amount of fear. And the anti-immigrant rhetoric that Trump first brought down the escalator in 2016 is only ramped up in his first term and now into his campaign and now a second term.
Term limits have forced you out of the mayor's office come May. 16 candidates, I believe, running to replace you. What advice would you give the next mayor?
What my advice would be to continue to focus on the fundamentals of this city. Every city in the country operates similarly. We have families who want to make sure that they can afford to live here, that have a good quality of life, and they have access to education and good paying jobs. Our work over the last 8 years has been to ensure that we get those fundamentals right. And as a result, I think San Antonio has one of the strongest workforce and education pipelines in the country.
What are you most proud of?
I'm proud of the fact that I can go back to my house at night and answer my son's question, which he was asking 12 years ago when I ran for city council the first time, when he was 3 years old. Have I made San Antonio a better place? And I believe, as a result of the work that we've collectively done, all of the work that we do is because of a strong team. I can answer that question and say, absolutely yes, San Antonio is in a better place today than when I walked in here. And there's no doubt in my mind it's in an upward trajectory. And those businesses and families that are lucky enough to make their home in San Antonio are going to inherit a great city for the years to come.
Mayor, last question here. I read that you want to stay in public service after you leave City Hall. Do you have aspirations to be in state government, to be in federal government at all?
I have one job right now, and that is to finish the work of my office, and I fully intend to run through the tape. I would like to stay engaged. I plan to stay engaged. I will. I'm not sure what that looks like yet, but if there's work to be done in public life, I plan to do it.
Mayor, it's always good to see you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Have a great day.
The Roundtable is ready when we come back here on Inside Texas Politics. And when you think of wildfires, California likely comes to mind. But did you know that Texas is at a substantially higher risk of wildfire than most states? The Texas A&M Forest Service explains which parts of this state are most vulnerable on a brand new episode of Y'all-Ticks, out this morning wherever you get your podcasts. All right, time now for Reporters Roundtable to put the headlines in perspective. Back with us, Bud, Ian, and Bernadine to talk about the politics happening across the state. And Ian, let's start with you. The Texas Senate is on the fast track to pass school voucher legislation. No surprise there. The Lieutenant Governor has done this a number of times, and he told us he was going to do it again. What's interesting about this legislation, like before, there's no accountability for private schools, which bothers a lot of Democrats, including Senator Royce West, we heard from a moment ago. But the universal eligibility is not everyone can really get this if it passes in its current form, because people making below a certain amount of money are prioritized.
And that's right. And I think that's where you're going to see the debate pick up on the House side. The House hasn't even announced its formal committees yet. So, it's definitely at a different pace than the Senate. We'll expect, to see also, later when the governor gives his State of the State address to kind of address this issue too, in terms of the importance of it. And that could potentially help, accelerate the debate. But I think when you're talking about kind of like the income threshold that was kind of part of the Senate bill that's going to be voted on by the full Senate later, that's going to bring up debate, the accountability measures, and the whole aspect of whether this is going to be serving the folks, serving a diversity of folks. And I think that's going to be the debate in the House in terms of kind of whether there's some other kind of guardrails to consider on this legislation
that might be added to it. And Bud, we have seen the voucher show many times before in the legislature. How much of this current bill is likely to make it through?
Well, I think this will make it through. I think that the vouchers are a small part of the school finance budget. The big thing to see will be how much they pass for schools in this session, not for vouchers. The question, I think, is still, conservatives would want this to be means tested. Just leveling $10,000 for everybody is not really means tested. A family that has no money still can't afford a private school with $10,000. On the other hand, a family of of 4 with $150,000 probably can't afford it. It doesn't help the poorest kids.
Bernadine?
Well, I don't think it helps the poorest kids exactly, but I think that a sticking point will be just how the public schools will be funded. Because I'm with Senator West in thinking that it will pass, but as everyone is saying, what's going to be in the bill? And I think that at this point, a big sticking point is going to be funding public schools.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Governor Abbott signing a number of executive orders requiring the state to cooperate with President Trump's immigration crackdown here. How is Texas going to cooperate with the feds? Because I know there are a lot of cities across the state who are a little concerned about that, thinking, hey, it's a federal job, you do your job, we'll do our local job. What should we expect from the state?
I mean, the 5 executive orders that Governor Abbott passed this week really were aimed at, directing state agencies and other departments to really kind of assist federal officials, whether it be immigration officials or officers, in different ways, just to make a more cohesive effort when it comes to investigating, detaining, and deporting migrants. And so I think what we'll see is a more kind of coordinated effort between the state and the federals. What's still not to be clear is like kind of how those things actually take shape and how they actually look. One of the things that he talked about was creating more border barriers, and that's still kind of a little bit of an open question about like what that actually means on top of what's already being done or has been done. So a lot still to be that's still to be seen.
Bernadine, just a few seconds left. Go ahead.
Well, and I was going to say that it's a no-brainer that the state needs to work with the federal government to make things happen. So that was not a surprise. I just think that we need to see again how much the cooperation will be.
Good deal, guys. Thanks so much. We appreciate that. Thank you for watching as well. We're back next Sunday to take you inside Texas politics, and we hope to see you then.